Good morning, everyone. I am Dustin McCreary. I've been a member here at UUI for 2 years. I've been attending for 3 years, and I serve as co-chair for the Worship Associates. I'm very passionate about worship and spiritual practices. What I'll be sharing today is my story of an encounter with the Spirit of life, an invitation into prayer. I'm grateful for this opportunity to share. Thank you for listening. At my workplace at White Pine Wilderness Academy, I'm fortunate to work in cultural preservation projects. This means learning languages, songs, social practices, crafts, and many other skills of traditional people. This led me to participate in a traditional practice known as a vision quest. Have you heard of this? This is a 4-day fast, no food, solo, no contact, in the wilderness, often on top of a hill. And I have some little slides to run through here. This tradition is done universally. That was my spot there. By many cultures all across the planet. A cultural technology utilized for transformation. In my work lately at White Pine, I've been immersed in the traditions of the Lakota people. The Lakota are an indigenous nation living right there in the middle of the United States. Sometimes they're referred to as the Sioux Nation. They have a vision quest in their culture. It's called Hamblecha, meaning crying out for a vision. That's a great definition of it. And I took that journey of crying out for a vision, and again, that was my spot. Throughout history, we have a reoccurring story of spiritual seekers crying out for guidance while fasting in the wilderness. Buddha was under a tree. Jesus went to the desert. Muhammad, Moses went to mountains. While the vision quest was a powerful experience for me, it was just a stepping stone, though, in realizing a vision. The next challenge for me was to make a pilgrimage to South Dakota, to a Lakota Sundance. Have you heard of a Sundance? When I speak of it, most people think of the film festival. This is not that. This is a Lakota religious ceremony. A lot of teepees, a lot of indigenous folks, but a lot of people from all around the planet, really. At the Sundance, I was to support our friend Amos Rodriguez. He's from El Salvador, and he's been a Sundancer now for 13 years. He's been helping out for nearly 20 years at this Sundance. And he's the fellow there in the middle. That's us all on that trip. To support Amos meant I was to journey with other supporters, those fellows there across the country. Learn language, again, songs, tend fires, gather herbs, build teepees, and generally just be helpful. The Lakota family I support is the Afraid of Bear American Horse family. Afraid of Bear and the American Horse family. And they carry a rainbow prophecy. We like rainbows around here, which speaks of a time when all of humanity will rise to heal a damaged earth. And this age to come will be guided by indigenous wisdom. The people there are very welcoming, and the elders embody this prophecy. There's actually hundreds of Sundances that happen throughout the U.S. and throughout the world, and normally they happen around the solstice, summer solstice. This is just one. While there is a common theme between them, such as a sacred tree. Before the Sundance ceremony really begins, a large tree, say 50 foot tall, is cut down and placed in the center of their sacred circle, the arbor. It is felled ceremoniously with axes and hatchets. First, little girls go up and make the first hit. And they're not supposed to make that much damage. They're just supposed to, it might even be a 2-year-old. Just make a little hit. It's a ceremony. Then the tree is felled and we catch it on our shoulders. It's never allowed to touch the ground. So we carry this now for hundreds of yards or more, and we re-erect it in a pre-dug hole. Colorful prayer ties are tied around the tree, and these represent all the prayers of the community. There's potentially thousands. There's tiny ones, too, that you can't quite see. The tree is to be the center of that sacred arbor and will stay there until next year. The tree now symbolizes our connection to the divine. The ceremony spans 4 days. During this time, there's singing, dancing, and drumming, and this all carries the prayers through the hills, the mountains. This is happening in the Black Hills of South Dakota. The Sundancers fast from food for those 4 days and pleasures. They enter trance states. And then in the evening, every dusk and dawn, actually, they do a sweat lodge. Anybody ever been to a sweat lodge? I know a couple of you have because I've seen you at the ones I go to. So the sweat lodge is called, and this is the thing that really got me hooked in this ceremonial lifestyle, is these sweat lodges. And if you're interested, ask me, and I got a good place for you to be. The sweat lodge is called the inipi, meaning to cleanse the spirit. In the ceremony, stones are heated in that fire there for hours until they're glowing red. Then the stones are brought in to the center of this enclosed dome. And next, water, which they call water of life, mini wachone, is poured over the stones. For hours now, songs are sung, more rocks are added, and they are calling out often to Great Spirit, which they call Tonkashela Wankantanka, meaning Great Grandfather, Great Spirit. One of the 4 days, these sun dancers, the males, they pierce themselves, not all of them. And the women, they do a small piercing too on their arm. And the men oftentimes do it through the chest. They are then tied to that sacred tree through that piercing, and eventually they are to tear themselves away. This is considered a bodily sacrifice for the people. This is the peak ceremonial moment for many. And this was to happen to my friend in that picture, the guy in the middle, for the 13th time on the 3rd day. Now I want to backtrack just a little bit. That's me and my friend Matt in Buffalo. It was great out there. Now, before going to the Sundance, we went to the Badlands. And our friend Amos, the Sundancer friend, he took us on a deep backpacking trip out there. He is an extreme survivalist. He was even on that television show Alone, if you're familiar with that, I believe it's the History Channel, where he lived in Alaska remotely for like 60 days, with like 5 to 10 items. And here's Amos removing a rattlesnake from our camp. He has absolutely no fear. He's an interesting fellow. He specializes in hard tasks, big adventures, clearly. So on the Badlands, naturally, we walked many, many miles to the highest hill that we could go to in a day's hike, and camped through the most intense lightning and hailstorm of my life that night. It was really scary. We were on a cliff edge. It was intense. We went to connect with the landscape, to recenter, to sing to the buffalo, and importantly, to gather a lot of sage, which is incredibly important to the ceremony out there. Sage and cedar. Following the storm, the next morning, I woke to the grunts of a buffalo around our camp. And with a strong gut feeling, I awoke to feeling like I was going to find the remains of a buffalo. It was just a feeling. I even joked with others as we kind of made our walk out. But nature has its way of speaking to us. So deep in the wilderness of the Badlands, I found that buffalo skull there. The buffalo being the most important animal to the Lakota, it felt incredibly symbolic and good. Our group was astonished at the state of the skull, and I was stoked to have this feeling come true. And this was just to be one of many auspicious events of the journey. In time, I brought it to the Sundance leaders, to the Lakota elders, not knowing what to expect, half expecting that they would just take it for themselves, as they surely deserve to do. But they actually returned it to me after holding it in ritual and blessing it, and they told me to carry the blessing and share this story with you here now. So following this epic backpacking trip and fast forwarding back to the Sundance, I'm 3 days into this ceremony, but really I'm a week into sleeping outside. I was outside in that hailstorm and it was intense. I'm a week into sleeping in a little one-man tent. Well, actually at this point, I switched to sleeping in a teepee, which isn't as easy as you might think. It's a really specific technology. And so I'm not really sleeping that well. It's wet, the mountain, mist comes over top of you every night and everything gets soaked, the fire's popping. I'm getting just maybe a couple hours of sleep each night, but also each night I'm doing a sweat lodge for maybe 2 to 3 hours at a time, and I'm 4 or 5 of those in. I'm also oftentimes staying overnight next to a fire just to keep it alive. That's a big job there. And the sun exposure had got to me, and I was very sunburnt. The elements taking their toll. And for some reason, this was much harder on me than my vision quest. The spiritual energy of the entirety of the event is just consuming. It's powerful. I was more than exhausted. I was defeated. And I was due to return to work in just 2 to 3 days. I'd hit a wall, and it's not easy to admit, but I told my friend Matt that I was done. I was quitting. I'm dropping out of the ceremony. I have to stay back in camp and just hide from the sun. I was ready to abandon everything. It felt like there was no other choice. So after some moments of silence, it was kind of an awkward silence because I told everybody that I was abandoning the project, and some support, a few words, my friend uttered some words that changed my perspective. He reminded me why Amos was dancing while he was piercing there, what all this was for. He reminded me that Amos was carrying prayers for the people, the community, and specifically for the children of the world. So I gathered some resolve, and I walked to the highest hill around. And on that hill, I got on my knees, and I bowed my head, and I prayed. I prayed maybe for the first real time in my adult life, meaning I felt a true surrender. I prayed for the strength to support the dancers. I prayed for the people. And winds began shifting around me, and I felt a presence. And I continued to petition for mercy for everyone on top of that hill. Mercy for the dancers, mercy for the supporters. And that's when a teaching came to me, a vision, what I was hoping would happen in the vision quest. It came to me in the form of drumming, but not from a ceremonial drum from the Sundance, but actually from a hairy woodpecker. Yeah, you guys familiar with hairy woodpeckers? They oftentimes are right out this window. I see them here all the time. This is one I met there at the camp. I didn't know it at the time, but it's said that in the Lakota tradition that woodpeckers carry prophecies in their sacred drumming patterns. And to my surprise, as clearly as I've ever felt anything in my life, the drumming spoke to me. It spoke to my heart, and I was told how to pray. In the woodpecker's drumming, I heard, or maybe I felt these words: go to the forest, wander until you find a feather, and find a proper place to sit. Sit for a while, sit in silence, and pray. And if you don't know how to pray, start by asking for mercy for the children of the world. I had a moment of doubt, of course, of my experience, but there was an internal motivational urge, a push to go get this feather here that I had found actually on the day in which I had arrived, a hairy woodpecker feather. So I gathered my feather from the camp, and I found a place to sit, and I prayed as I was instructed to do. A deep sense of relief overcame me. It poured through my body. And we can be done with the slides now. Eagle bone whistles are an item that the Sundancers wear, and they blow them constantly. I begin hearing this, and so this means the beginning of Amos's round has started, where he's getting pierced. So I carried my prayer feather into the arbor as the round began, and I confidently danced behind Amos. It's just a little step dance like this. As he did his piercing and as he was pulling away, I stamped the ground, dancing. I felt into Amos's discomfort. I felt pulled by the tree itself too. I felt strong that people were carrying the prayers of others. And then there was a shift again in my vision. And in this breakthrough moment, I felt a deep mercy for myself that I had not known before. Amos was in front of me, and I couldn't help but be behind him. I was trying not to be, but his shadow was casting on my body, so all my sunburnt that I was really concerned about, I was really burnt, was being covered mostly by him. And then the west, the sun was in the west, and the tree was between us, and so the shade of the tree was also casting on my body, and I just felt this incredible mercy, because it wasn't the case for everybody else in the arbor. If you weren't in where I was, you were getting blasted by the sun. And for this reason, through the branches of the tree, I could see the sun clearer than ever before. I've not been able to reenact this moment, unfortunately. I tried just earlier. It was in this moment like a shield was over my eyes, and I could see clearer than I could ever see, towards the sun at least. And I stared into the sun, and it projected obvious rays in all four directions, and then I felt a presence. The presence of Spirit, the presence of the Spirit of life. We sing each week to Spirit of life. And as humans do, I tested that feeling. I called out in my own spirit, "Show me your face." And then a feeling of foolishness overcame me as I quickly knew that God's face could be seen anywhere that the light shines. We should know this. Where the light shines, we can see the Spirit's face. So that day wraps up. Day 4 comes, the final day of the ceremony. It went by with grace, joy, celebration, ease, and I made it back in time for work. It was an epic adventure, and it's how I came to share this story of prayer with you today, feeling very led to invite people into a simple way. See, since I was a child, I've been fascinated with religion. Although I didn't grow up particularly religious in any certain sect, my mom loves God, and she takes Christ's commandment to neighborly kindness very seriously. So I prayed when I was a kid. I sometimes prayed to the moon for protection during sleep. I'd peek out my window, try to catch the moonlight in my eyes. Sometimes I would light a fire and dance around a tree at night, and I would pray. I'm that same kid, if you can't tell. Nature reverence is quite natural to me, and it's actually quite natural to a lot of us. So as a kid, I prayed. I prayed to God until I didn't. Teenage angst arrived. Did that happen to you? As it does happen to most of us. But so did an insatiable curiosity. I left behind any religion that was given to me, and I found myself on the wagon of the new atheist movement of the early 2000s. Maybe you've heard of that. My teenage angst dissolved eventually, and I began studying Eastern philosophies, meditation, mythology, esoteric practices. And while my 20 years of time since then, 20 plus years, has been pretty enlightening, I avoided shining any light on prayer. I would prefer the word contemplation. It sounds a little fancier. But I consider prayer just a little bit too woo-woo, to be honest. I never considered loving kindness meditation. We did that last week, I believe. I never considered that to be a type of prayer. We are wishing well for others. That is a prayer. I'd given up on any type of divine intervention. I even had some spiritual experiences under my belt, but they did not convince me of anything. See, I was going to use my own will and skill, like a lot of us have, to move myself along my own journey. No prayer needed, and maybe no one else needed. Which, don't get me wrong, the historical Buddha, I like that guy. He said, one of his last words were said to be a lamp unto yourself. But also, what do you think? I think we need help at times. Have you been there? Are you there? Are we there now? Do we need help? We can't do it on our own. So we gather here today because of this truth, because we can't do things on our own, to support and for the support of this community. But as it turns out, we still just can't accomplish all that we wish for the future generations, it seems. Help is needed. We stand at a point in history where seemingly we can only do so much, even though there's an obvious awareness of the atrocities being done, here in Indy or all over the world. Truth doesn't seem to matter to everyone. The truth that we know, the truth of love, and that it's at the center of all matters. What's next then? Well, as unique as our suffrages may be in this time in history, we oftentimes think our suffrages are very unique. Spiritual and historical texts tell us of times, or even recent times, that look exactly like today, or maybe even worse, oftentimes worse. Struggles against empires, children seeking refuge, false narratives being sold. Let's give credit to our ancestors and their suffrages. So what did our ancestors, what did your ancestors do to get through this seemingly hopelessness? Because it's always been present. How did they survive those crises and find resolve so that we can be here now? Well, you can guess it. One thing they did was pray. They leaned into their faith. They cried out to the Spirit of life, to God, because when a kid gets hurt, they cry out, "Mom, Dad!" And we cry out too. We call out to the eternal Spirit, the eternal parent, the original parent, the source of all, great Spirit, Spirit of life, God, whatever you want to call it. So now, I ask you to sit in silence for a moment and pray with me. Give it a try. And if you find it difficult, let's listen to the woodpecker's instruction and give thought to the suffering of the children of the world. Send the loving light that you have inside that we all share. Please now join me in asking for mercy for the children of the world. Take a deep breath in. Exhale and settle your breath. Relax into your seat. Close your eyes. And let that light of your mind turn inward. Turn that light towards your heart and feel. Feel from your heart center. Feel for the children of the world. Hold them in the loving light that we all share. Mercy. Mercy for the children, Spirit. Mercy. For now we have prayed. Blessed be, and amen.